Hey everyone, it's your Peacekeeper, and it's time for the next video in our How to Play series on the Japanese cruiser line. This is the Tier 8 Mogami class of cruisers. The Mogami class of cruisers is a class of 4 light cruisers built for the Imperial Japanese Navy in 1931 to 1937. The 4 ships are split into 2 subclasses, the Mogami subclass and the Suzuya subclass. The 4 ships are Mogami, Mikuma, Suzuya, and Kumano. The differences in the subclasses has to do with experiences in the construction of Mogami and Mikuma, which influenced the construction of Suzuya and Kumano. And the reason for that is because these ships were originally built under the London Naval Treaty as 8,500 long-ton light cruisers. To achieve that weight, they had to basically weld the hulls together, which was new for cruiser construction for the Japanese, as well as using a lot of aluminum in the construction of the superstructure. And the reason they used aluminum was because the preceding Takao class of cruisers, of which Atago is a member of, and both ships are actually in game, they found that those ships were really top-heavy, and thus in heavy seas would have a tendency to capsize if they, didn't add bulges to them like they did later on. So to fix that on the Mogamis, they basically decided we're going to go ahead and use aluminum. And both of those things together caused a lot of heartache for the people building them because it was new. It was new experience. Everything that they had to basically relearn how to, make these ships and get them there. That also caused some other problems even after they were built, and all 4 were extensively rebuilt just shortly after launching, just to keep them afloat and to deal with the stress fractures formed while firing the main battery. The design of the ships afforded superb protection, though, for a light cruiser, both from enemy shellfire and aircraft, as these ships basically set sail with some of the heaviest anti-aircraft armament for any of the Japanese cruisers at the time. And they also had pretty healthy armor protection as well, considering they were originally launched as light cruisers and then later upgraded to heavy cruisers. In the late 1930s, Japan withdrew from the Second London Naval Treaty, and all 4 ships were extensively modernized. During the modernization, the triple 155mm turrets were replaced with the new 203mm twin turret guns, while the 155s went into service on board the Yamato-class battleships. Torpedo bulges were also added, and more anti-aircraft, and by the time the refit was complete, the ships had swelled in displacement to 13,000 tons. It's also interesting to note that this is the class of cruisers that influenced the U.S. Navy to build the Brooklyn class of light cruisers. By the way, is my favorite class of light cruisers, and I hope we get them in game soon. And those ships are specifically designed to counter this cruiser. In terms of service history, all 4 ships were present at the Japanese invasion of the Dutch East Indies and at the Battle of Midway. Mogami and Mikuma participated in the Battle of Sunda Strait, where they assisted in the sinking of the HMAS Perth and the USS Houston. Mogami and Mikuma would collide during the Battle of Midway and were forced to return home for repairs. While en route home, Mikuma would be sunk, though, and only Mogami made it back. And she would actually go under the knife to be rebuilt as an aviation cruiser, with her rear turrets being removed and replaced with the flight deck for handling seaplanes. The 3 survivors from Midway went on to fight at the Battle of Leyte Gulf, where Mogami was again damaged when she collided with the Miyako-class cruiser Nachi, and she would have to be scuttled by the Japanese destroyer Akebono, most likely because the captain of Mogami was a Kuso Teitoku, which basically means crappy admiral. I don't think it was actually an admiral, but anyway, Kumano would limp to Manila Harbor in the Philippines and would be sunk by aircraft from Admiral Halsey's carriers. Suzuya, who avoided Mogami and Kumano's fate at Suragawa Strait, would be sunk during the battle off Samar by U.S. aircraft. In terms of their in-game play style, Mogami is a stealthy and very maneuverable ship. She is one of the few cruisers in the game that can stealth torpedo, meaning that her torpedo range is longer than her detection range, if only just, by about 0.7 of a kilometer. But given the fact that her torpedo arcs are exactly like Miyoko before her, which is absolute garbage, by the way, it's not really all that useful. You don't really get to use the torpedoes as frequently as many would certainly like. Her anti-aircraft suite is improved and quite respectable given the lack of AA strength of Japanese cruisers. In fact, I would even go so far as to say that her anti-aircraft suite is stronger than New Orleans' anti-aircraft suite, which is interesting because last time I checked, the US was the anti-aircraft nation. Anyway, balance. Anyway, her gun configuration is only slightly more comfortable to use than Miyoko, and I say that because we don't have this awkward third turret is facing at least the correct direction, but unfortunately the number 2 turret is actually not super firing. It can't shoot over the number 1 turret, so basically, in order to use this, you have to expose, a pretty decent chunk of your broadside to bring those guns to bear. But it's not these front 3 guns that actually are the problem. It's this rear one specifically here, which interferes with the catapults when it starts to aim forward. This is only mildly improved when you switch from the 155s to the 203s. The 203s, having less barrels, can, in theory, turn a little bit more aggressively without running into issues with hitting aircraft on catapults. And while the 203s definitely have, are a little bit better forward firing, I just don't think... Well, we're going to talk about that in a minute. Her citadel is massive and poorly protected. For having such a quote-unquote heavy armor suite, a whole whopping 4 inches basically in the middle... 140 millimeters, though, that's not too bad. That's about 5.5 inches or so over the magazine spaces. That's pretty good. The problem is it's above water and it's huge. In fact, I think if I could pull up Iowa, her citadel used to be that big. It was smaller. That's smaller, but anyway, it's huge. And basically, the ship is really soft incoming fire. You can see with 25 millimeters of the hull plating, not going to stop the overmatch of a 16-inch shell at all. And because of how big this citadel is, and again, this bulkhead here, it's a floating citadel. And as such, the recommended play style is to find and aggressively abuse islands. Speaking of gun choices, the 155mm guns with IFHE are probably the one that I'm going to recommend you guys go to. And that makes this a very awkward ship as far as captain skills are concerned. Running IFHE is definitely recommended. The 6-inch guns have a much better rate of fire. You've got 5 more barrels on top of it, and it doesn't feel like it starts fires any less than the 203s. The only advantage that the 203s seem to really have is, again, those gun arcs, as well as the AP being able to puncture, heavier armored targets at longer ranges. Ultimately, it's not going to matter. With the playstyle of this, longer ranges are... The HE spam from the 155s is more than enough to make up for the lack of AP pen. And in fact, the AP on this ship I'm sure is quite capable, but HE with IFHE is extremely potent, and again, is what I'm going to recommend. Overall, though, this ship was very frustrating. In fact, this ship was more frustrating to play than Miyoko was. Like I said, you're a floating citadel, and basically the thing just accepts incoming shell fire, and you have zero recourse to it. It's a large target. It has a wide turning radius, but a quick rudder shift time. And as maneuverable as it is, its only real strength in terms of survivability is her stealth, which means knowing when and when not to fire, as well as abusing hard cover like islands. All right, let's talk about some stats. She has 39,100 hit points, up to 140 millimeters of armor. Again, that's going to be the belt armor over the magazines. A 16% torpedo damage reduction. The main battery can consist of 5 triple 155mm turrets or 5 dual 203mm turrets. They have a 15.7 kilometer range for both of them. And reload rate on the 155s at 10 seconds. The 203s are going to be at 15 seconds. And the 203s do still turn just a smidge faster than the 155s do, but at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter that much. The turrets turn plenty quick for the turning radius of this ship. She does have basically the same secondary armament that all Japanese cruisers have had basically up to this point. That's going to be the 4 dual 5-inch gun mounts. They do have a 5.5 kilometer range, which, yay. Anyway, main battery shoots out to 15.7. Fire chance, 10% with the 6-inch guns, but you've got 15 barrels, so that adds up really quick, and they come out every 10 seconds. It's ridiculous how easily this thing starts fires. Torpedoes, again, she does have torpedoes, 4 quad launchers. They're going to be 2 quads per side, so 8 total per side, 10k range, 62 knot speed, 17,233 damage, 1.6 kilometer detection range, but the most garbage arcs you could possibly ever hope for. Basically, broadside and aft is about all you really can use them for, and we'll talk more about that later. In terms of anti-aircraft, she does have 10 single 25mm mounts, 4 dual 25mm mounts, 8 triple 25mm mounts, and those 4 dual 5-inch gun mounts. AA suite goes from 5k and steps down to 3.1k for all the rest of them, but again, pretty healthy, plus she gets defensive fire as a consumable. In terms of maneuverability, maximum speed of 34.5 knots, 750 meter turning radius, 5.7 second rudder shift time, and again, pretty maneuverable ship, and that is going to be with the rudder shift module, so that will go down if you choose a different module there, but 5.7 is pretty respectable for a heavy cruiser, especially at tier 8, and that's without the last rudder shift module, which we'll talk about when we get there. Concealment by sea, 9.3 kilometers. Concealment range by air of 6.7 kilometers. All right, now let's talk about those upgrades. In the first upgrade slot, I'm still going to stick with Main Armaments Mod 1. I've found that this ship tends to lose its turrets just a little too much for me to really recommend Auxiliary Armaments Mod 1. And Main Armaments Mod 1, again, that's going to reduce the chance of your main battery and torpedoes. Not that the torpedoes are really that useful. Main battery and torpedoes is going to reduce the chance of them being incapacitated by 20%, increase their hit point pool by 50%, and decrease the time it takes to repair them by 20%. If you were going to run this ship as an anti-aircraft cruiser for whatever reason, Auxiliary Armaments Mod 1 on this slot with preventative maintenance on your captain, that's going to give you the best mix of survivability and of both the ship and the gun mounts. So Auxiliary Armaments Mod 1 is going to effectively double the hit point pool of your secondaries, yay, and your anti-aircraft guns. Magazine Mods 1, really not. If you really want to reduce your chance of your detonation, I recommend running the flag. You get them quite easily. In the second slot, Aiming Systems Mod 1, still going to be my go-to here for the 7% reduction in max dispersion of the main battery. It does help with the torpedo tube traverse speed, 20% extra speed in turning those torpedoes. The secondary battery range and dispersion drop, not all that useful. Again, the secondary battery on this cruiser is very weak. No reason to run Secondary Battery Mod 2 for that same reason. AA Guns Mod 2, again, if you were going to run the ship as an AA escort for whatever reason, this would be the recommended modification. And somebody's going to say Main Battery Mod 2. The turrets turn so slow. Well, the ship also is a giant floating citadel, so getting close enough to where the turrets need to traverse fast, not a whole lot of use. Plus, at roughly 30 seconds on turret traverse with expert marksman on the captain, the turret traverse is definitely livable. If this was a little bit more tighter turning ship, I would definitely recommend something like this, but ultimately it's not worth the reduction in your RPM, your rounds per minute, to get a little bit quicker turret traverse. But somebody's going to say it, and if it works for you, by all means use it. In the third slot, I'm going to recommend Propulsion Systems Mod 1. This is going to reduce the chance of your engines being incapacitated by 20%, as well as reduce the time it takes to repair them by 20%. If you're somebody who thinks that losing your steering gears is far worse than losing your engine, Steering Gears Mod 1 is the same as Propulsion Mod 1, just for your steering gears. I don't recommend running Damage Control Systems Mod 1. It's a cruiser, 3% reduction in flooding and risk of flooding after being hit by a torpedo, yeah, chances are you're probably going to be pretty close to dead in the ship if you're going to be hit by torpedoes. Yep, not really a huge thing. Minus 5% to the risk of fire, just not enough to really justify taking that mod over the other two. In the fourth slot, I am running Steering Gears Mod 2 for the 20% reduction in rudder shift time. Propulsion Systems Mod 1 because you are going to be spending a lot of time near islands, hopefully on maps with lots of islands for you to use. I can definitely see a good case being made for this. That's going to reduce the time it takes to reach full power when accelerating by 50%, and it's going to increase the engine power when the ship starts moving. This only impacts the ship in that negative 6 knot to 6 knot range, which is basically where you would be at if you're, bouncing around near islands. Damage Control Systems Mod 2, the 15% reduction to time of fire, extinguishing, and flooding recovery. Again, these ships just aren't durable enough to tank, and so this module to me seems not like a good investment. Either of these two would be far better investments for quote-unquote tanking damage because you're tanking it by outright evasion rather than actually being hit by the shells. In the last slot, because this is a Tier 8 cruiser, we do have 3 options. I am running Concealment Systems Mod 1, which is going to reduce the detection range of the ship by 10%, and it's going to increase the dispersion of shells fired at me by 5%. I'm running this because stealth on this cruiser is the best defense this cruiser has to incoming fire. By not being seen or disappearing after you've shot, you've effectively made it impossible for them to shoot at you, and that I just can't value that enough. The ship has plenty fast rudder shift time, so I don't recommend Steering Gears Mod 3. That's going to reduce the rudder shift time by an additional 40%, and it's going to decrease the time it takes to repair the rudder by 80%. Again, really not all that useful on this ship. I mean, I guess you could run this and then run the Propulsion Mod 1 in the previous slot. That would give you kind of the best mix of both worlds. However, again, I still feel like concealment is king on these ships. And 10%, that you're going to be in the low 10s there, which is still pretty solid. Just overall, I think concealment is a much better option. The last upgrade slot that I would recommend on this is going to be Target Acquisition Systems Mod 1. The 50% increase to the range of assured acquisition of ships. Basically, at 2.5 kilometers, you will automatically detect ships, regardless of whether they're through an island or in smoke. You're going to detect them. This is going to increase that by a further 50% out to 3.75 of a kilometer. It's also going to increase your overall spotting range, which is the gray cone, by 20%, and it's going to increase the time or the acquisition range of torpedoes by an additional 20%. Enough of me blabbing about this. Let's go look at this ship in a battle. All right, so this battle is going to be on the map Trident, and it is a Tier 8 fight. There are no carriers, so I guess this game isn't legit. There is another STW member in this match, but just so you guys are aware, I was not on TeamSpeak when this battle was recorded, so this battle has nothing to do with him, aside from the fact that he's also in the battle. Usually on this map, because it is Epicenter, I like to find myself a good hard piece of island cover to sit behind and wait for things to kind of shake out in the direction of travel. Because we've spawned on this side of the map, my island of choice is going to be the island that is on the line between E and F and the 4-5, that cross section there. That's going to be just slightly to the west of us. And to get there, we're going to take kind of an interesting route, just because I like being difficult and different. This is Epicenter, and the goal of Epicenter is to capture as many of the points as you possibly can. Some people don't seem to understand this concept, and it can be very frustrating to play on this map. Basically, the tactics for this map, regardless of what ship class you're in, is to get all of your ships basically into one giant death ball, either going to the east or to the west, it doesn't matter, pick a direction, and you want to get your ships in that second middle ring there to support your destroyers in the middle, while also keeping them from capping the outside. Now, you can see here we're kind of taking I'm going to call it a wide route, and that's because I don't want to be in that spot between these two islands here that are, you can see one on the left and one on the right. I don't want to be too close to those, because the closer you get to those, the less likely it is for you to get to this island over here under stealth. And I definitely want to get there under stealth, because this ship eats citadels like a fat kid eats candy. I mean, it's bad. It is really bad. So we went ahead and we took a pot shot at this Nuremberg, my bad. Don't want to piss off my German friends there. We took a pot shot at him because I thought, well, he's behind an island. I don't see anything that's detecting me. Yeah, there's a destroyer somewhere over there. So, yeah, we got detected by him. That's a little frustrating. But we've managed to make it over here without eating massive quantities of damage. And that means being detected, well, it doesn't really matter. So we can go ahead and start engaging. Hey, look, another Mogami. Aha, Mahan as well. So that's the destroyer that was spotting me. Definitely need to pick and choose kind of what ships I want to engage here. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, though. Aha, we've managed to... Look at that. Mogami just ate a whole friggin' bunch of citadels. Probably 2 of them, at least, from a battleship. My guess is that New Mexico. But, we're in a good place right now. We're basically holding the cap. We are able to kind of creep ahead here. And we can see that there's a lot of ships. Their whole fleet as a whole is making a move to the west, which means the vast majority of their most dangerous ships are going to be basically out of engagement to me, so I don't have to worry nearly as much about them. This would have been a perfect time for the Propulsion Systems Mod 1 to actually pay in, and started that Mogami on fire and killed him. Well, I'll take that for $1. Now we can engage this King George V. Ooh, torpedoes coming in. I think that Nuremberg started the King George V on fire. I think that Nuremberg there was trying to torpedo me as it came around, or he was trying to get the destroyer there, the Fubuki. Alright, so we've managed to start this New Mexico on fire not just once, but twice. We're already up to 4 fires. Oh, and he put it out already. Well, that was nice of him. Now we can light him on fire and burn him to death. And he just ate a big hit from somebody. Oh, look, that other Nuremberg. I'm never going to get that right. That other Nuremberg. Yeah, German. Is poking out. Don't threaten me with a good time. He's going to start me on, try and start me on fire here with HE. If I were him, I would have shot AP at this range. The AP on that cruiser would have been absolutely devastating given the profile I was presenting him, but a quick salvo ends him quite thoroughly. And now we kind of need to make up our mind here. Quick check behind us to see if we're going to get to a ship come up behind us. Looks like we're pretty good here. Don't need to worry too much about that at the moment. We do have this New Mexico, and that means we're going to go ahead and bail out of here, because basically all the big threatening ships on this side come down to this New Mexico, who is thoroughly occupied by someone else, and that King George V, which is basically dead. You can see here, though, that the 6-inch guns are doing a lot of damage to this New Mexico. Now, granted, aiming so that the... Yep, ouch. Down he goes. About 3,500 damage a salvo, which is pretty healthy for HE, especially 6-inch HE, sorry. And, yeah. So there's a good look at those torpedo arcs. You can see here that the only reason I'm able to use them is because, well, there's nothing that can shoot at me. Yeah. If you try and do that when you have ships nearby, they're going to look at you and they're going to pop you like you're going out of style. You're going to be that zit. So, okay, now we got Miyoko here, and we're going to engage him, or her, them. We're going to engage them and try and sink them with our guns. And you can see here, we're not able to bring that other gun mount into play. And we need to change that. Oops, started him on fire. Looks like he burned his damage control party real quick. Still not able to bring that middle turret and the front 2 up, but we're going to try our dangest to get this Miyoko. No. Okay. Well, we tried. We are in the middle. The only thing keeping us from actually capping this is this Nuremberg. Anyway, he's the only thing that's really... And he's got us hydroed. Well, that was nice of him. He saw my aircraft go up. Whoop. I think those were Miyoko's torpedoes. Not a bad choice to launch those. Trying to get myself angled here to shoot at him. Again, want to stay angled as best you can to these ships, but you can see here we're gonna do some pretty healthy damage. We just lopped off 8K quite healthily. Pensacola should be firing AP at him, but I digress. And another 2K. I mean, this ship, lower tier cruisers, I mean, it's a tier 6 cruiser, so not exactly the strongest light cruiser in the game. And we go for the 4th kill. We're up to 69,200 some odd damage, and we've got ourselves a Akatsuki. Oh, poor Akatsuki. At least it's not an Atlanta killing her this time. Well, we're going to go ahead and we're going to shoot at her and try and sink her because she appears to be AFK. Look at how much damage you lop off with this thing. Again, this is the 155s. The 203s, I'm not going to show you a battle video with them because, quite honestly, it's a bit broken. Nope. The Miyoko near me decided to not give me my Kraken, which means we're going to have to work hard to get a Kraken out of this whole ordeal. And yes, I understand that this, again, I'm showing this ship in a light that is probably a little bit more positive than I truthfully want it to be. And it's not that the ship is completely awful. The ship has some defined strengths in its ability to start fires, and its stealth, and its ability to flex across the map. But what it is really lacking in, though, is the durability department. And it feels like Pensacola, and as you can see here, my SDW clanmate is a hull of 147 hit points. If I were him, I would be very cautious about where I go right now, especially with 2 ships that could possibly shoot at him and kill him quite easily. Well, okay, so we got ourselves a Monarch over here. We need decision-making time. We don't want to expose a huge broadside. I was trying to get behind this island, but unfortunately we're going to get spotted by this Monarch before we get around the island, which means we need to, yeah, we're going to go ahead and we're going to have to turn in and pray that the Monarch doesn't choose us as his target. Right now I'm not detected because of the fact that, you know, the dispersion circle went down because I was still behind this big island that I was camping on at the beginning of this match. And now we are going to go ahead and start engaging him. 5K with only 8 pens. Wow. That's pretty strong. We also have to contend with this New Mexico. Now, the tactic for dealing with these 2 ships at the same time is going to be giving up those rear 2 guns. And this is one of the strengths that this ship has. Oop, slam on the brakes. Pray he misses. Well, he got us. He did 2K damage. Not too bad. Still going to engage this Monarch and try and help this Queen Elizabeth get him down, especially if I can get him on fire again. He just burned his repair party on the other 2 ships, so they're on the other fires that had been there before. And again, started him on fire, and another couple K off my hit point pool thanks to the New Mexico. And now the Monarch has decided that I am prey. So we are in a really bad place, especially if he decides that, oh, he's shooting HE. Well, that's unfortunate, but that's far from damning. So we can deal with that damage. And, oh, can I get the Kraken? Can we? Yes, Kraken unleashed. And we are up to 105,000 damage. And again, IFHE basically makes this ship possible. And that was really unlucky dispersion by that New Mexico. IFHE really makes the 6-inch guns possible, so if you're going to run the 6-inchers, you need to keep that in mind. Definitely. There's another fire, so we got 11 fires already in this match. Keep that in mind if you are running the 6-inch guns. I would prioritize getting IFHE. That's really the only way that you're able to do consistent and reliable damage to battleships with this 6-inch HE. Yeah, the New Mexico is very angry at me, at least that's what it looks like, and whoo, shot at our Queen Elizabeth, and hoy, he took off a lot of hit points. That's alright, we are going to go ahead and, now that he is no longer focusing on us, we are going to go ahead and turn just a little bit more, and down he goes. So that's kind of the end of it. Again, the ship is really soft. I didn't quite show that in this video, but I wanted a good video to show its strengths. 136,901 damage, 5 kills, 12 fires started. We got that cracking. 2,168 base XP. There's the detailed report and credits and XP screen. Overall, not a very fun ship to play on maps that are open. It can be kind of fun in an Atlanta sort of way on maps that have a lot of hard cover like Trident or Neighbors, but overall, not the most fun ship to play, at least in my books. Anyway, I'm your Peacekeeper. Like, comment, subscribe, and thank you for watching.